Well, Adrian Wojnarowski and Brian Windhorst are reporting that the Brooklyn Nets remain unclear on Kyrie Irving's ultimate intention to get vaccinated, and they made no decision on whether they will actually accommodate him as a part-time player. There had been optimism that he would get vaccinated to comply with New York's COVID guidelines and thus be able to practice and play in home games. However, that may not be the case, as Woj joins us now live on SportsCenter. So, Woj, why is optimism waning in this regard, as you've reported, and what are they planning for if Kyrie remains unvaccinated?
Hannah, that optimism has waned simply because it hasn't happened yet. And Kyrie Irving was with the Nets early in training camp in San Diego, looked great in camp. Now he's back in New York, where local guidelines do not allow him to practice or play for the Nets at all this season unless he's vaccinated. And right now, he hasn't done it. And for Brooklyn, the real question that they have to start asking themselves and they're preparing for is, are they going to allow Kyrie Irving, if he doesn't get vaccinated, to be a part-time player, to be away from the team for stretches at home where he can't practice or play, and then all of a sudden play for the team, show up, play games, practice on the road, and be in and out of the lineup the entire season? And that's the question for Brooklyn right now if Kyrie Irving doesn't get vaccinated.
And not only is he key, of course, to their championship hopes, but in terms of his own salary, Woj, how much does he stand to forfeit under NBA guidelines?
$380,000 a game, Hannah, if he doesn't play, doesn't get vaccinated, and misses those games in Barclays Center in Brooklyn or at the Madison Square Garden in 2 games against the Knicks. And I think for Kyrie Irving right now, this is, really a pressure point on his future in Brooklyn. And I think he's got to make a decision about whether his future is going to be with the Nets, because it is really not a sustainable model to have him unvaccinated all season, in and out of the lineup, or maybe just out of the lineup if they decide not to have him be a part-time player, and then all of a sudden in the playoffs, to not be eligible to play in home games in the postseason. It's hard to have a roster built around a player like Kyrie Irving if that's the situation. So the Nets continue, so they've listened to Kyrie Irving. They've tried to educate on the safety of the vaccine, but ultimately it's going to be his decision about whether he receives it. And right now there are a lot of questions in Brooklyn in the short term and perhaps the long term with Kyrie Irving if he stays unvaccinated.
I mean, the Nets have a 6-game homestand starting the second week of the season. At one point in November and December, as you point out in your article, they're at home for 20 out of 26 days. So this is all going to continue to come to a head. Woj, thank you.
To take a jet to LA to try and get Simmons to go back on his trade, but they were rebuffed by Simmons and his camp. So Joel Embiid, the Sixers' mainstay, their guy, had this to say at media day: "I really hope he changes his mind. I do love playing with him because he adds so much to our team. We've been building this team around us. I don't see it as this is my team. I don't care about any of that." Shams, the drama is real with this group. So what more can you tell us about this story and Ben Simmons?
Yeah, those players, Joel Embiid included, Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, Danny Green, they wanted to fly out to LA last week to meet up with Ben Simmons face-to-face and really try to pitch him on coming back and committing to this 2021-2022 NBA season. But it's clear he does not want to be there. I'm told he's mentally checked out. And listen, whether he ultimately returns to Philadelphia at some point, because there will become a time where they could start docking his pay, and that is $225,000 plus every single game. But even when he returns, he will not be that same dedicated Ben Simmons, and it would not surprise me if he's still on that roster in November, December, January, and he ultimately does report back to the Sixers, he'll just end up in street clothes and have maybe some ailment. But so that's what the Sixers are navigating, is you have a guy that's clearly, has 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or in this case, both feet out. And his teammates have tried to get through to him. They just have not been successful.
Yeah, it just sounds like a classic case of knowing when to hold them and when to fold them. And it sounds like the Sixers are not really ready to fold them yet. So, Pat, when we talk about the reports that we've heard about the trade talks with Ben Simmons, is that Daryl Morey is asking for too much in return for Simmons. So as this process plays out, as we get closer to the regular season, how do you think things will unfold with Simmons and the Sixers?
Well, it's clear right now that all of the leverage is in the Sixers' position. Ben Simmons is under contract for the next 4 years. He really doesn't have any means to get out. As Shams mentioned, if he chooses not to play, the Sixers can dock his pay, and he can just be on the sidelines. And even without him, I don't think that they're by no means a championship contender, but they have a chance to be a pretty good team. And so as time goes on, as they play with one another, if they have success, I think that just strengthens the Sixers' position, and it leaves Ben Simmons in a position where, he really has a difficult choice because, as Shams mentioned, if he comes back, he's coming into a team with teammates that are going to question his commitment to the team, and that's not even talking about the wrath that he's going to get from fans. So right now he's in a really difficult position. For him, as soon as he gets back to playing, the stronger his trade position is going to be. But right now he's not in a good position.
Yeah, and Shams, we saw during media day for the Sixers that Daryl Morey tried to have some reconciliation with Ben Simmons in that situation. So we heard you say that, right now it's really 2 feet out for Ben Simmons with his deal with Philadelphia. So do you realistically think that he could play for the Sixers at some point?
So could he play? Listen, he's got 4 years left on his deal. Could they just wait him out for 2 years and ultimately see his way back onto the floor? Of course, to me, Cam, this is a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? Who's going to blink in this staring contest first? And who's going to make that first move? Is it going to be Ben Simmons going back to Philly in some way, shape, or form? Or is it going to be the Sixers deciding we're going to just have to get rid of Ben Simmons, cut our losses, and trade him for something that they don't want to trade him for? They want an all-star type of guy back. That's just not available in the marketplace right now. Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, those types of guys are not available right now. But as of now, to me, it just is what it is. Ben Simmons is 2 feet out the door. The Sixers just don't feel like they have enough.
Yeah, and as we get closer and closer to that regular season, somebody will blink, somebody will flinch. But right now, it doesn't seem like Ben Simmons is going to do either of that as we get closer to the open of the NBA regular season. All right, gentlemen, let's switch coasts and go into the coast of L.A., California, the state of California, where the Lakers are going to have a different look when they take the court for the first time this year. And Shams went in depth with how L.A. acquired Russell Westbrook in a draft night blockbuster this offseason. We highly recommend, strongly suggest that you check it out on The Athletic. Let's take a closer look at this deal. And Shams, the most interesting thing that you learned while doing this reporting for this story was what?
To me, it's just the player empowerment, right? Is that the moment that Russell Westbrook got a tip from someone the morning of the draft that the Lakers were going to move on and make that Buddy Hield trade, Russell Westbrook went straight to Ted Leonsis, the Wizards owner, I'm told, and told Ted Leonsis, I want this trade, get me out of Washington, and I would prefer to be with the Lakers. And he made his desire known that he wanted to be a Laker. And obviously that softened the stance for the Wizards, who at that point had no intention really to move Russell Westbrook or engage in any talks. Tommy Shepard, the GM there, reaches out to Rob Pelinka in LA and decides to try to come together on a deal that made sense for both sides. And listen, the Wizards ended up with 3 rotation players that could help them moving forward. But Russell Westbrook getting what he wants, player empowerment, that's what this era to me is about.
Yeah, this is a huge blessing for that Lakers franchise to get Russell Westbrook. And Pat, I know you never take off your front office guru hat. So you've been involved in a lot of big moves when it comes to trades when your time was there with NBA front offices. So how touch and go are these situations when you're trying to build a championship roster?
Well, they're always touch and go when most of the negotiations are taking place between 2 front offices, because that's where each side is trying to gain the maximum amount of leverage, get the most out of the deal. What was unique about this deal, though, was it bypassed the front offices from the beginning, with Russell Westbrook going to Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Washington Wizards, blessing the deal. The Lakers getting Jeannie Buss on board. And so after that was done, both front offices knew that they had to do the deal. And so I think it was much easier for a deal like this, which in a lot of other circumstances would be really difficult to pull off, to make that happen. The timing also helped, I might add, just being right at the time of the draft with that 22nd pick coming into play. that everything worked out perfectly to put this team together.
Yeah, no doubt at all. And a lot of people are intrigued to see how this LA team will look as we start the regular season and if they could eventually win an NBA championship with this roster that they have. All right, guys, let's switch lanes and focus in on the other team in LA, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers. And their star, Kawhi Leonard, signed a long-term max deal with the Clippers this offseason despite coming off an ACL tear. And he explained why at Media Day.